Welcome back to Purpose Over Paycheck, Midlife Reinvention with me, Dr. Lisa. This is a midlife reinvention movement for women 50 plus rising in faith, walking in freedom, and living in flow and flourishing in every God designed season. Today begins a special series inspired by my book, Losing the Weight 90-Day um, Faith, Freedom, Flow, and Flourishing Blueprint for Midlife Reinvention. I wrote the book on it. so, so I can say that. And I want to start here to the degree that you all know I'm normally sitting at my computer with my camera and all the things, but my schedule right now is so packed. But I wanted to be certain that I got this series out. So in between appointments, when you're getting ready to travel somewhere, and everything from last minute things to manicure, pedicure, and all that kind of stuff. So this is me doing all of that, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do one of these call recordings. I'm not going to let my schedule stop me from doing what's necessary. And even the more reason for this little special series. And this episode is Midlife is not the end of your story. Midlife is not the end of your story. There is a quiet fear many of us, I'm including myself, carry into midlife. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It says, maybe I've already peaked, right? Maybe I've already checked all the boxes and done all the things and accomplished everything that there is for me to accomplish in my life. Maybe the bold years are behind me. Maybe this chapter is just maintenance, not expansion. We may not say it out loud, but it's a whisper in our mind. And it's something that we feel in our soul and in our heart. We reconsider what we've built, we reconsider what we've carried and what we've accomplished, what we survived, and in some instances, what we have or how we have thrived. On one hand, in spite of, and on the other hand, because of. It's like six in one hand and half a dozen in the other, right? And yet sometimes we still wonder, is this as good as it gets? When I began to notice that pattern, not just in other women, but in myself, I realized something important. Women, we're not lacking ambition. We weren't lacking ambition. Ambition is what got us here, right? In the first place. We weren't lacking, ideas, on some hand, lacking examples, right? But we were lacking permission. I realized we were lacking permission to believe that growth doesn't expire, that joy isn't reserved for youth in our younger days, right? In our former days, that believing that reinvention was reckless and that expansion didn't and doesn't have an age limit, right? Permission to believe that all of those things you know, we're allowed to want more. We are allowed to want more. That realization is why I wrote Losing the Weight. Not to motivate women, but to interrupt the quiet belief that our stories have already climaxed. Now sit with that. That our stories, our lives have already climaxed, and nothing could be further from the truth, right? The book does three things for those of us in midlife. First, it restores our perspective. It helps us to see that midlife is not a decline, it is depth. It reframes this season, um, as ending to more like recalibrating, right? Reinventing, dreaming again. Second, this book restores agency. Many of us aren't stuck, even though we feel like it, even though on some levels it may look like it. We have been waiting. We have been waiting for clarity, waiting for certainty, waiting for everything to feel safe, waiting for the perfect time, or waiting because we put so many other things as priority. But now our priorities have shifted and they're allowed to shift. And that's the beauty of being in this stage of midlife. Losing the weight gently challenges that pattern of the waiting pattern and invites us to begin living now, not dramatically. And I'm not a reckless girl, okay? We're not talking about doing this with reckless abandon. Absolutely not. But we're talking about doing it honestly. That's what I write about in the book. Us living honestly. And third, losing the weight restores alignment. The 90-day blueprint inside the book isn't about productivity. Let me repeat. It is not about productivity. It isn't about clicking, checking more boxes and creating more boxes. It's about practice. It's about integration. It's about embodiment, right? It's about practice, faith, trusting this chapter matters, freedom, releasing the beliefs that keep us small, flow, listening to our inner wisdom. We've gotten here, we've got wisdom, not just gray hair, but we've got lived, practiced, earned wisdom, right? And flourishing, building a life at this stage rooted in wholeness, not performance, because we've already performed. That has been done. I wrote this book because I saw too many capable, accomplished women living responsibly, but not fully, living efficiently, but not truthfully. Midlife is not the time for us to shrink. Oh, contraire, mon frere. Midlife is the time for us to refine, just like fine wine. This is the chapter where peace matters more than applause, alignment matters more than achievement, and truth matters more than image. If you have ever felt like your expansion season has passed, your biggest moves are behind you, your meaningful impact already happened, this book was written for you, by me, with you and me in mind. Okay? You are not alone. Not to reinvent who you are. That is not it. That's not it. That's not it. We didn't get here to reinvent who we are, but to return to who we've always been beneath the roles, expectations, and postponement. which were all things that we needed to do at different points and seasons in time in order to even get to this place. Noted, understood, acknowledged. Midlife is not the end of your story. It is the chapter where you finally stop waiting to live it. Losing the Weight is available on Amazon. You can get it there. And this special series is the conversation behind the pages. Something I want you to consider. You know, I always have a question, right? Where have you quietly assumed that your life has already peaked? Where have you quietly assumed that your life has already peaked? What would you change if you believed this chapter still holds expansion? What would you change if you really believed that midlife is not the end of your story? And this is an opportunity in this chapter of life for there still to be expansion, that you still holding space for expansion. What would you change? And as I do in all the episodes, I like to close with a blessing as you ponder this. But before I do that, if this is resonating with you in any way, be sure to like, comment, and share. Share this episode with someone that you know. And subscribe to my channel, Purpose Over Paycheck TV, and turn on that little bell thing so that way anytime I go live or upload a new video, there's new content, you get notified. Sharing is caring. You are not on this midlife journey alone. I know that there is someone in your circle that could benefit from this information. So please share that information. All right. So now here's the blessing. Wait, I wrote it down because I want to make sure I don't want to miss anything, because when I get these, what I call divine downloads for these blessings, I don't want to miss a kernel, a morsel of the blessing. May you trust that your story is still unfolding with intention and grace. May you release the belief that your growth has an expiration date. May this season move gently from expectation to alignment. And may the next chapter of your life be lived fully, not postponed. Midlife is not the end of your story. I promise you, midlife is not a crisis. It is an invitation to reinvention. We're still here. We're still rising. Yes, because we're holding space for expansion. Faith, freedom, flow, and flourishing. This is 50 plus reinvented. I'll see you next episode. And this special series has 3 segments. So this is the first one. So join me for the next one. Bye.